So you know that feeling when your skin is glowing and you know you look good, and it just brings out your inner confidence? There is nothing like it. Thankfully, Silver Mirror Facial Bar can help summon that feeling on command. They use the latest technologies, top-tier products, and seriously skilled estheticians to develop a custom plan just for you. Book your appointment today and get $30 off your first facial with the code CityCast30. Just go to silvermirror.com/CityCast and tell them we sent you by using code CityCast30.
DC cares about being green, but it feels like there is always something new to learn. How do I know what can and can't go in the recycling? And how do I collect compost without it stinking up my whole house? The list goes on. Thankfully, Paint Care makes responsibly recycling your leftover paint easy. Paint Care has 3 simple rules for painting smarter and reducing waste. 1, buy the right amount of paint for the job. 2, use up what's left. And 3, recycle the rest. To learn more or find a paint drop-off site near you, visit paintcare.org/3simplerules. That's paintcare.org/3 simple rules.
Today on CityCast DC, it's late spring, which means it's the perfect time to get outdoors and head to a vineyard. But this year, there's something else in the air: the threat of tariffs driving up the cost of imported wines. So, to tell us which local wineries are worth the drive and how to not break the bank, I've got Dave McIntyre here from the Washington Post. Today is Wednesday, May 21st. I'm senior producer Julia Karen, and here's what DC is talking about. All right, so Dave McIntyre of the Washington Post, you have the coolest job title I've ever heard of, possibly one I want to steal, which is wine columnist. How does the DMV stack up when it comes to producing wine and making good wine?
It stacks up really well, and it's getting better every year.
Yeah, are there particular types of wines from particular vineyards that you're excited about?
Well, sure. If you're new to Virginia and Maryland wine, really ones to look out for red wines would be Cabernet Franc, is a variety that does really well here in the Mid-Atlantic, and a lot of Virginia and Maryland wineries specialize in that. And I hate to pick favorites, but just to name one on each side of the Potomac, Barbersville Vineyards, which is down near Charlottesville, just north of Charlottesville, makes a wonderful Cabernet Franc. And in Maryland, one I've had recently that just blew me away was from Lowe Vineyards in Mount Airy. The 2021 vintage was just superb. Now, for white wine lovers, Viognier has a reputation, especially in Virginia, but it's become a little eclipsed lately by a grape variety called Petit Manseng, which is really exciting. It's very unusual. You don't find it elsewhere in the world in large numbers, and it gives you a very sort of tropical, fruity wine, both bone dry and a really great sweet dessert wine, depending on how the winemaker wants to do it. So it's very versatile, and it does very well in this humid mid-Atlantic climate. Another white grape variety to look for would be Albarino, and even Sauvignon Blanc, which is probably a little more familiar to many wine drinkers. A lot of the wineries around here are doing really well with that.
All right, Dave. So what's a good way to get started and head out to a vineyard around here?
Going to the local wineries is it's an experience. So the best thing I would recommend is pick maybe 2 or 3 wineries that you would like to visit in one day. That's plenty. And look at their websites. So know what wines they make. Match them with the styles you like. Know if they're having any events that day, like live music or food trucks or anything like that. And when you go, you might need to make a reservation, so the website will tell you that. Be respectful. This should be obvious, but don't be trying to just smash back as much wine as you can in an outing. Don't be boorish. Remember that a winery is a private business. It's not a public park. A lot of people show up and think they're going to have their wedding there or their family reunion picnic, and it's really not appropriate to do something like that. It is perfectly fine to hang out for a few hours and buy a glass or a bottle of wine to share there with your family and friends. But remember, too, that it's not a playground for your kids. If you are taking kids, be sure to look for kid-friendly wineries. Same with pets. And look after your kids if you take them. Don't just let them run around. And the vineyards are not a track for them to run around in and play in or everything, especially at harvest time, because there might be a lot of activity going on. So there's a safety issue there too.
So we are getting to the time of the year, obviously, when people want to get out a little bit more, maybe want to explore. Tell us about some of the wineries in the region you're a fan of. Which places in Virginia are you excited about that people should go to?
Oh, there are so many. Well, Virginia has basically, roughly speaking, two main wine regions, Northern Virginia and Central Virginia. So think Loudoun County, but also Fauquier and Prince William have a few good wineries, and Fairfax even. And then Charlottesville would be the other area of focus. And you could concentrate on that. You can do a day trip to Charlottesville. It's about 2.5 hours from the Beltway, depending on traffic. And the new lanes on I-66 make that a lot more easier than it used to be for several years during the construction. So if you were doing Charlottesville, you could do it in a day, or you could do it an overnight and do it in 2 days. On the way down in Madison County, look for Early Mountain Vineyards. Is a great place to go. It's owned by Stephen Jean Case of AOL fame, and their winemaker, Maya Hood White, is just doing spectacular work with a variety of wines. Their Petit Manseng and Cabernet Franc are just ones definitely to look for. I already mentioned Barbersville, which has a wonderful restaurant and a small inn that you can stay in if you reserve ahead, of course. That's north of Charlottesville, and nearby you would have Horton Vineyards and Keswick are very close. And on the other side, west of Charlottesville, I would recommend King Family, Veritas, and Afton Mountain Vineyards especially. Stinson Family Vineyards is really good too. And south of Charlottesville, around Monticello, you want to look for Michael Schaap's Wineworks and several others. Pippin Hill is a very beautiful facility that's making some good wines and has a good restaurant. In Loudoun County, which of course is a lot closer, they bill themselves as DC's wine country. There are many really good wineries and new ones popping up all the time. Some of the older established vineyards would be Chrysalis, Boxwood, and Bro. One of the ones that I really like is Walsh Family Vineyards. And they just are doing some really nice wines. And they do an interesting thing, too, to look for. Every now and then on a Friday, they'll do what they call a bar takeover, where they'll invite another winemaker to come in and pour his or her wines for their guests. So there's this good community spirit where the winemakers are helping promote each other, which helps because with nearly 300 wineries in the state, it's hard to get to all of them. Especially in one weekend. So there's a lot of things to look for. Do some web research and plan ahead. It's a little more complicated than just heading out 66 and down 29 and looking for the grape signs along the road to point you in a different direction.
Oh, yeah. No, you're not doing a road trip and drinking and driving. We are not fans of that.
We're not.
No.
That's another thing about tasting. Spit. Use the spit bucket. Don't be shy about it.
For
and
sure.
Don't drink from it.
Definitely.
After the Fact, a podcast by Pew, keeps it real with data-driven insights on today's big issues. No spin, just facts, mixed with stories from experts, policymakers, and people making a difference. Whether you're into the research or the personal stories behind it, we've got you covered. So what are you waiting for? Listen to After the Fact wherever you get your podcasts.
If you're a CityCast superfan, you have definitely heard us singing the praises of our longtime supporter, Paulson & Nace. Big news! Paulson & Nace is now Nace Law Group. Same great team, just with a new name. When you are hurt by the negligence of others, you want a lawyer that will actually fight for you, not one that will settle for the bare minimum. Nace's compassionate lawyers fight to bring cases to juries so you can get everything you deserve. If you've been hurt or lost a loved one because of someone else's mistake or negligence, call NACE Law Group for a no-obligation consultation. Visit www.washingtondcinjurylawyers.com or call 202-463-1999. If you've never visited the Folger Shakespeare Theater, now is the time. It's showing the Shakespearean classic Twelfth Night, but with a groundbreaking modern twist that brings pure joy. This is not the Shakespeare that you fell asleep reading in 10th grade. It is a contemporary, sexy production of Shakespeare's great comedy. Sure, there's loss, love, and identity, but there's also a sense of discovery, lavish costumes, and great modern music. The director used the term elegant kink while describing it to me, so you already know you're in for a ride. Think She's the Man meets RuPaul's Drag Race. Performances start on May 13th and run through June 22nd, and tickets are going fast. Don't wait. Go to folger.edu/12th night to purchase tickets. That's folger.edu/1, 2, night.
So, of the ones that you listed, obviously they all sound like incredible. I'm probably going to go check out the Loudoun County ones. Are there ones that you think are kind of more affordable? Say you're my age and you're 30 and you're like, maybe a trip out to Charlottesville at an inn is a little bit out of our price range. What would you recommend in terms of something a little bit on the more affordable side?
Well, as far as visiting wineries, I think you can do that fairly inexpensively at a lot of places. So again, internet research, look for the price that they charge for a tasting. What do you get for a tasting? Are you paying $15 to taste small samples of 3, 5, 6 wines? Do they have different flights where you can try perhaps a little larger sample of 3 or 4 wines, things like that? Maybe just buy a glass. Look for ones that have food. Chrysalis in Middleburg has what they call the Ag Center, where they sell pizza, they make the cheese there and everything like that. So that's a lot of fun. Early Mountain also has a good restaurant. I mentioned Pippin Hill's restaurant. Those aren't necessarily fine dining. Some of them might be. Barbersville is more fine dining. So to buy a wine to bring home is not going to be cheap. Unfortunately, the economics of wineries around here don't allow them to make quality wine and sell it for what most people would consider a reasonable price. So you should expect to spend $25 and up on a bottle of wine to either to drink there or to bring home. But I encourage people to do that and try them, because it always helps to try a wine after you've visited and you're not there. You can get a better impression of it and whether it fits your style and your taste.
Awesome. I definitely will be making a trip across the river to Virginia to try some of this out. Let's talk about some Maryland picks. Say you want to stay on this side of the river. What would your recommendations for Maryland wineries be?
Sure. There are a few actually kind of close in. Montgomery County, for instance, we have Windridge Vineyards, which in Darnestown, which has a great view of the Seneca Creek, sort of off to the Blue Ridge, and very nice wines. Also in Montgomery County, Sugarloaf Mountain Vineyards. If you're going hiking on Sugarloaf Mountain, you'll pass the vineyard to get there. They make some very nice wines. Further up towards Frederick and Antietam, Big Cork is very good. And in Mount Airy, I mentioned Low Vineyards, but you have Linganore, which is famous for sort of sweet, fruity wines. They're a very old winery, but they're also doing some newer stuff with dry wines that are actually very good, including that I'm fond of from the Saperavi grape. They're one of very few people in the Mid-Atlantic growing that. And in the same region, you have Black Ankle Vineyards, which is a very popular place to visit.
One of my favorites.
Yep. And don't miss Old Westminster Winery, which obviously is a little further north in Westminster. They also have great pizza, so you can hang around and have lunch and sip some wines. They do get crowded on weekends, I've noticed that. But the wines are terrific, and there's a lot of variety there. The Vineyards of Dodon, which is near Annapolis, they make some very good wine. Their Sauvignon Blanc is quite good. And Port of Leonardtown, which is obviously in Leonardtown. It's only about an hour's drive from DC. Very talented winemaker. They're racking up some awards. It's an unassuming little place right on the road, but a lot of character there and very good wine.
Got it. All right. So say maybe you don't have a car or you don't have a friend who has a car and you got to be in DC proper. Any recommendations in the Diamond that you got for us?
There's District Winery down in the yards near the Navy Yard that makes its own wines obviously from grapes that are shipped in. They don't have a vineyard right there. They're in DC's urban winery. There are some places, some restaurants and wine bars too that are paying attention to local. And that is a great change just in the last several years. Because when I started as the Post wine columnist in 2008, there were articles that I wrote, a couple of them too, complaining that local restaurants didn't have any local wines. That is changing, thank goodness. And there are even some that specialize. There's a wine bar on the H Street corridor called Irregardless. 2 UVA grads own it, and they decided they wanted to specialize in Virginia wines. I think maybe they've added a few non-local wines to appease some of their customers, but they're maintaining that focus. So that's an area to go to try some local wines. And some of the restaurants are doing things too from time to time. So they may not always have local wines on their lists, but they try to at least have 1 or 2.
Dave McIntyre, thank you so much for these recommendations. Hope to share a glass of wine with you.
Well, that would be fun. And I would just encourage all your listeners to explore local wines because it's an experience that you can't really have. You could still actually meet the winemaker at the tasting bar on a weekend, where you won't really find that out in California at many places anymore.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on, man.
You're welcome.
That's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend and hit up a winery? We'll be back tomorrow morning with even more news from around the city. Bye.